Victoria from Biblio Lifestyle, and you're listening to the Reader's Couch podcast, the show that will help you bridge the gap between living a full and busy life to one where you're reading, learning new things, and having fun. Today on the couch, I'm so excited to welcome Jessie Gaynor to talk about her debut novel, The Glow. In The Glow, a desperate young publicist tries to save her career by turning the charismatic leader of a grungy retreat center into the hot new self-care brand. Now, in this episode, Jessie and I talk about her inspiration to write this novel, current social media, internet, and influencer culture, and we even play a game called What Wellness Product or Trend Would PR Jane Want to Sell?, which was inspired by the main character in the novel. Now, Jessie also shares some great book recommendations that will topple your TBR, plus great tips for someone who wants to get into reading and for readers who are going through a reading slump. And we talk about so much more. So let's get into the episode, because I can't wait for you to listen to my chat with author Jessie Gaynor. Hi there, could you do me a favour really quick? Would you pretty please subscribe to the show, leave me a 5-star rating if you like it, and share an episode or two with your bookish friends? Better yet, if you could drop a link to the show or to your favourite episode in your book club or bookish group chat, that works too. I promise, it only takes a few seconds, it really helps the show, plus I'll be incredibly grateful for it. So thanks in advance, and now on to the episode. Hi readers, welcome again to the Reader's Couch. I'm your host, Victoria Wood, and here on the couch with me is a writer, editor, and brevity enthusiast. But she's here on the couch with me to talk about her debut novel, The Glow. Please welcome to the couch, Jessie Gaynor. Hi, Jessie.
Hi, Victoria.
I'm so happy you're here. Can't wait to talk about your book, The Glow. But it's your debut. On a scale of 1 to 10, I mean, how are you feeling? How excited are you?
I'd say I'm both a 10 on excitement and a 10 on dread.
Yeah, I can see that. It's a mix of both, but I'm super excited for more readers to read your book, and I want them to hear it straight from you. Tell us about your novel, The Glow, and what can readers expect when they pick up a copy?
Yes, The Glow is about Jane Dorner, who is a 25-year-old, or she's a 28-year-old PR worker who tells people that she's 25. She is in a lot of medical debt, and so it's very important to her to keep her job despite the fact that it is far from her passion. So in a bid to keep her job when she feels she's going to probably be fired, she goes to a wellness retreat that she finds on Instagram, thinking that it may or may not be a cult, which is something that interests her as well, the idea of joining a cult. But when she gets there, she finds out that it's not a cult, but it is something that she thinks she's going to be able to monetize. So it's sort of, it is her journey from wellness skeptic to wellness believer in order to sell this product, which is Cass, the beautiful and enigmatic leader of this wellness retreat.
Right, absolutely. And I think, Jane is quite an interesting character. In addition to her working at this PR company, going off to this wellness retreat, in her personal life, things are chaotic. You just mentioned she's in debt, which was a result of a medical bill, her getting healthcare at a place that was not in network with her health insurance. So she's heavily in debt. I think that's something folks could relate to. She's also been recently dumped by her partner, so that's also something readers can relate to as well. And she knows she needs this job, but she's not really passionate about it. And she has so much going on in her personal life. She doesn't know if she's going or coming. So tell our listeners about Jane, who she is before she goes to this wellness retreat, and just where she is at that part in her life.
Yeah, so Jane is, I think, I have seen, before I stopped reading Goodreads reviews for my mental health, I saw a number of reviewers refer to her as an unlikable protagonist, which I think is accurate. But I think it's important for me to think about the ways in which everyone is a bit of an unlikable protagonist. And writing Jane, it was really fun to dig into sort of her unlikability and just the thoughts that I think she's a very self-aware character. And so she knows that the things that she says in the third person narration are unlikable, but she kind of can't help herself she feels a great deal of self-pity, even though, her life is objectively pretty good apart from the medical debt. And I think that sort of writing a character who thinks bad thoughts that she knows she shouldn't admit to anyone was a lot of fun for me.
I love hearing that. And I think folks on this podcast probably know I seem to have a thing for unlikable characters because I like reading about incredibly flawed people because I often say we don't always make the best decisions always. And if all life was in a novel or maybe on television, people would have differing opinions. But I didn't hate Jane. I mean, I didn't love her, but I liked reading about her. But the person I'm curious about is Cass, who is the leader of this wellness retreat. So the weekend retreat, it's called Fort Path. And Cass is gorgeous, she has great skin. I mean, the glow, after all. And, they do conventional and then unconventional things at this wellness retreat. I'm not going to spoil it for readers. But tell me about the character Cass. Where did she come from? And what was your writing experience like, kind of discovering her and getting to know her?
Yeah, it was kind of a journey. When I first started writing the book, Cass was actually a man, and that that felt a little bit more nefarious. There were some different dynamics if it was a dynamic between Jane and Cass, and Cass had been a man. So I think I needed her to be a woman, just to make her someone that Jane wanted to become potentially, and also kind of wanted to befriend maybe, and someone who Jane could sort of set herself against. And writing Cass was interesting because I felt like I was thinking a lot about how to write charisma. And charisma is something that is really, it's really obvious in a room, I think, but writing it, committing it to paper was difficult. So I think I leaned a lot on the physical. And I like to say sometimes that this is a book about hot privilege, because I think sometimes when a person is very conventionally attractive by whatever standards society is adhering to at that time, we just kind of ascribe to them wisdom, and sort of tend to believe what they have to say. So I was thinking about that a lot when I wrote Cass. I think that she believes what she says, but I don't think that a person who is less charismatic and conventionally attractive would be able to say them and get as much traction as she does.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. So here's the difficult question. Who did you enjoy getting to write or discover more? Was it Jane? Was it Cass? Or was it another character?
Yes. So I did not mention Tom in my summary, but Tom is the third main character of the book, he's married to Cass, but he is also queer, and not actually very interested in women except for Cass. She's sort of his one true love in his mind. And the first draft I had of this book, I actually had half of it from Tom's point of view. So I really enjoyed writing him, I think because I had already written so much of his backstory that didn't make it into the book. Mm-hmm. And so being able to write the scenes that did make it in, I felt like I knew all of this information about him that readers did not. And that was very fun for me to try to incorporate that in the sort of shorter times that we had with him.
Oh, I love hearing that. That's awesome. Okay, so I'm also curious about your inspiration for this novel. I mean, where did the idea come from for The Glow? What was the spark? Tell me about those early days of you writing.
Yeah, so this novel it began in a cultier place. And I would say the sort of one sentence kickoff for this novel in my mind was, what if there were a person who felt so lost that they really wanted to set out to join a cult? And I think I was thinking about the allure of belief. And I think that this is, um, obviously it's evident in religion. Religion offers people something, the idea of believing in something bigger than yourself. But I think in contemporary life, it's also something that, uh, skincare is functions this way too. It's like, I want to believe in this, that this diet will give me the beauty that I seek, and this beauty is something that is so prized in society that I just want to buy in wholesale to something. And I think influencers, the most interesting thing about influencers to me has always been how certain they are about what they're telling you. Every recommendation they have, this one is the best. I'm sure about this. And so I think the idea of the novel really came from wanting to think about a character who felt adrift and wanted something to hang on to, but couldn't actually get herself to a place of belief.
Oh, that's interesting because Jane herself feels like a character that didn't know she was going or coming. I mean, the way she identifies herself too in so many different versions of herself. One day, she is identifying as, okay, well, yeah, I'm a poet too. I'll do poetry. Another time, she's a PR girl. Another time, she's a wellness retreat girl, and so on. And then there's a version of Jane herself. How much would you say Jane is a reflection, or either both a mirror or a window to present day influencer culture? Is that making sense? Like, Jane makes herself, in my opinion, whatever she needs to be in that given moment. And we kind of see that with influencers. They are very certain in what they're saying and selling. How are these two similar? Did you model Jane after influencers, I guess?
I think I modeled Jane after the kind of person who, and I think, I would put myself in this category too, who cannot look away from influencers even while feeling intensely skeptical of what they're selling.
Mm,
And I think I think that feels like a very contemporary kind of dilemma.
yeah. It's like you know better, but you can't look away.
Yes, you know better, and yet you think, maybe I will solve all my problems with this serum, you know?
I know, especially in the beauty industry, we see models with flawless skin. We want that skin. So using skin for this purposes of this convo, and we try something, it doesn't work, but then someone comes with something new, a unique ingredient, or some new study, or even practices and rituals that belong to other folk that have nothing to do with them and their culture, but they're packaging it and they're selling it to you and saying this is the solution. As human beings, most of us gravitate towards it and we can't look away and we can't help but purchase and kind of perpetuate the cycle.
Yes, absolutely. I saw an Instagram ad for uh, a cow colostrum supplement, and the before and after picture made me think, maybe this really will make me look like I'm 20.
Oh my gosh, it's just wild. There's always something new. There's always a new product. There's always a new system, regimen, or just trend. And with that in mind, I want us to shake things up on the podcast and play a game. And this is going to be what would PR Jane sell, the wellness edition. So I'm going to list. It's going to be two parts. First, we're going to do wellness products, and then we're going to do wellness trends. And you're going to tell me what products or trends Jane would prefer to sell to her boss and hopefully sign these brands as clients. Are you ready?
Yes.
Yay. Okay, so the First, we're starting with wellness products. Would Jane want to sign a popular activewear brand that have these really fascinating leggings, or would she go for equipment and do dumbbells?
Ooh, definitely leggings.
Leggings, okay. Is she going to sign a brand that has this super unique, brand new, they say it works, collagen peptides, or is she going for essential oils?
Ooh, collagen peptides.
Okay. Is she selling foam rollers or pillow massagers?
I think foam rollers because they seem more punishing.
Yes, they kind of are. All right. Is Jane going to sell and sign a company who makes white noise machines or filtered shower heads?
You know, this is a good one. I've been thinking about filtered shower heads because I saw an ad on Instagram that said a filtered shower head would give you the hair of a toddler. And as someone with a toddler, you don't want that. It's very, very messy. I will say filtered shower heads, nevertheless.
Filtered shower heads. Okay. Last product I have. Would she want to sign a brand that has a red light therapy wand, or she's more into face mask, a new Superman face mask for the eyes?
Red light therapy wand.
Red light therapy one. All right. Okay, let's get into the wellness trends. So, what trend does Jane want to jump on and try? So, is she selling the concept of sleep syncing or the brand new gut brain connection?
Sleep syncing.
Okay. Is she all about incidental exercise, which is just basically exercise in small amounts at various points throughout the day? Or is she more into wanting to work with facial yoga or just face yoga that works the facial muscles?
Incidental exercise.
Incidental exercise. All right. And the last one, does Jane want to promote digital detoxing or EMDR therapy?
This is a tricky one. I think EMDR therapy.
EMDR therapy. All right. Well, thank you so much for playing our game. I was very fascinated with just her wanting to go to this wellness retreat and try these new things and learn these new ways. And it just got me thinking about all the wellness trends that are out there now, all these products, and how can you choose?
Yeah.
It's so hard out there. But I really want to get into your writing life, Jessie. Tell me, how long did it take for you to write The Glow from start to finish?
So I started writing it in 2017, I think. And I sold it in 2020. And then I worked with my excellent editor editing it for about a year and a half.
Okay. What would you say was the most difficult part of your creative process?
You know, I think for me, the most difficult part was before selling the novel. I have a full-time job. I still do. I did when I was writing. And I think the idea that you're devoting so much time to something and you're not sure if it's ever going to see the light of day. So I think honestly, the most difficult part was finding the momentum, even knowing that it was possible that no one would ever read the book outside of my family.
It can be tough for sure. But looking back, because now you have a book published, The Glow is here, readers can get their hands on a copy. If you could tell your younger writing self anything, what would you tell her?
This is something I've been thinking about a lot. And I think the thing I would really tell myself is you will nothing outside of yourself will make you feel secure in being a writer. That absolutely has to come from inside yourself. And I would have thought, I think I probably would have laughed at my older self if I heard my older self say that to my younger self. But having sold the book, it did not change the fundamental way that I viewed myself as significantly as I thought it would. It really validation is so fleeting.
Yeah.
And I really think it has to come from inside yourself. Otherwise, you will just be torn down by one negative review on Goodreads. You really have to have you really have to have the belief in yourself. And it's not something that I feel confident with yet. I still struggle with it, but it actually was freeing to realize that I can only write for myself. Any book that I publish will not make me feel like I am a worthwhile person. That cannot come from outside myself.
Absolutely. I think, it's incredibly hard because we are raised in a society where external validation is prized above anything else. It's when you do work at school, you're striving for the gold star, you're striving for the promotion. It's not even just the paycheck, which sometimes, I mean, hey, we want people to get paid what they should be paid and what they deserve to be paid, but just the external validation of, a new job title, because corporate America has so many different job titles for widely different things. And I'm like, well, how are you different from what's their name? So it's like we're all striving for these things, and not enough emphasis is placed on finding value within self. So I love that you're saying that, but I would be remiss not to ask you about reviews because you have mentioned it. I'm always curious about how authors deal with it. How do you handle reviews, both the good and bad ones? And you mentioned mental health earlier. How has it affected your mental health as well?
I I knew that this was going to be difficult for me because I'm much more sensitive than I would like to be. And so I was initially, for sort of the early reader copies, I was reading Goodreads reviews, and then I just had to stop. And my husband will still read them for me, and he will tell me if there is a good one that he thinks I might want to hear, and he'll give me the digest of that, which is very kind of him. I think it is helpful to have someone who will tell you things on a need to know basis. But of course, if there are reviews in publications that I know people are going to see, I feel like I have to read those. And I think it kind of depends. So far, it has depended on the content of the negative review. I feel like anything that says something that I already believe is more difficult for me to hear.
Yeah. I love that you have your husband as a buffer. I also know sometimes publicists can be good buffers. They'll send you the good stuff. And I think that's helpful. So I'm so glad to hear you have a buffer.
Yes. I wrote something for my job at LitHub. I wrote a blog post, just like a satirical blog post recently after I had read some Goodreads reviews. And I wrote a blog post that was called something like, "We need to talk about robust criticism is important unless it's about my book." And it was just sort of like, I think that it's important to have critical debate unless you're saying mean things about my book, in which case, please stop. And, it's sort of like, of course, I think book reviews are incredibly important. I love book criticism, but it is very difficult when it's about you.
Yeah, and my rule of thumb is if you're going to write a negative review, and if you're doing it on a platform, i.e. Instagram, Twitter, anything where you can tag someone, TikTok, whatever, don't tag the person.
Totally.
No, just don't tag them, say what you have to say. And then my other rule of thumb is if you're going to be critical, if it's, in your opinion, bad, then also criticize the work and not the person. Because I think it is possible. You can say, well, I was hoping for this kind of ending, or I really didn't like this character, but never make it about the author. Don't trash the author, because they're real people out here, and they're doing the Lord's work, in my opinion, because writing a book is just, wow, it is mind-blowing to me. I mean, I am in the content creation space. Obviously, I'm talking to you here on this podcast. However, it is incredibly difficult, and we take the time as readers to read the book. So, criticize the work, not the person. That's all I'm going to say.
I would appreciate it.
Yes, for sure. But on that front, also, again, I want you to enjoy this right now. The Glow, your debut, it's out there in the world, but we are greedy readers. We really are. So I want to know, are you working on any other projects, any other books in the future? What can you tell us?
Yes. So I had a second baby 4 months ago. So that has been a bit consuming. Before she was born, I was working on a novel about middle school, not middle grade, but so for adults, but set in middle school, because I think that the trauma of middle school is so real, and we more often get books about high school experiences, but I'm so fascinated by just how terrible an age 11 to 13 is.
Yeah.
So I was working on that, and I'm still hoping to get back to that. But I really want to write just a romantic comedy, because I love reading them, and I feel like we need more of that.
I would be here for a romantic comedy. I love a feel-good book, so that's exciting. But I'm also excited about middle school. Never thought about it, but you're absolutely right. Those years can be quite difficult.
They're awful.
Yeah, and they can scar people for life. I know that's for
Yes.
sure. So so either direction, I'm excited. Can't wait to hear about, your future works, but also enjoy your baby, 4 months. Enjoy that time. I know you have your hands full. But let's get into your reading life really quick. So share with us the last book or books you finished reading that you'd now recommend.
Yeah, so I recently read I guess I was on a Pulitzer kick. I read Trust, and I read Demon Copperhead, and I liked them both so much. They were both just really sink your teeth into them in different ways. I think when I am feeling overwhelmed and tired, I really turn to plot. I love books that are sort of slow and language focused, but when my life is a little chaotic, I need the anchor of a plot. And both Trust and Demon Copperhead had that plot that I was looking for.
Oh, amazing. What would you say was your favorite childhood book? Or in this case, what books are you reading to your children as well?
Well, my childhood favorites, I loved Lois Lowry's Anastasia books. I'm always looking for a book about an average kid, just sort of living life. Something about that when I was a kid really appealed to me. And Anastasia, she wasn't great at math, and she was just going to school day in and out, and dealing with pretty quotidian struggles, and I found that very comforting. The books that I'm loving for kids right now, a friend introduced me to a series of chapter books for, I think the cover says 6 to 8 year olds. I'm reading them to my almost 3-year-old, and she is obsessed with them. The Dory Phantasmagorie series, about a little girl who has an enormous imagination. There are little pictures in them. They're by Abby Hanlon, and it is such a joy to read a book that I love as much as my daughter does.
Oh, I love that. I love that. What books are you looking forward to reading in the year ahead?
I'm very excited for The Apology by Jim and Han, as well as Mobility by Lydia Kiesling. And Patrick DeWitt has a new book called I think it's The Librarianist, singular.
Yeah.
And I just love his work. I think he is so funny, and I may not have said at any point in this interview that The Glow is a comedy, but it is, and I love reading comedy. I think humor is just it's just my favorite thing to read, even in an otherwise tragic story. So I'm very excited about all of those.
Yay, great books to look forward to. So, in addition to books, we also love bookstores. So, share with our listeners your favorite indie.
Well, I moved from New York City to Richmond, Virginia about a year ago. So my favorite New York bookstore, I have to say two. My favorite New York bookstore is Unnameable Books in Prospect Heights. And my favorite Richmond bookstore is Shelf Life, formerly Chop Suey Books.
Ooh, amazing. All right. So, Jessie, we have, I like to say, 3 kinds of readers on here. We have avid readers, we have folks getting back into reading, but then we also have folks that are in between. And sometimes readers lose interest in reading, they fall into a slump, or someone is trying to get back into reading. So they fell out of reading for some time. What advice would you give them to help them, one, get out the slump, or to kind of ease their way back into reading after not reading for a really long time?
Ooh, this is great. I have definitely been in slumps. I have sort of unconventional advice because I know that a lot of people really, really hate reading on their devices. But for me, the biggest impetus to read more has been downloading the Libby app, which lets you borrow ebooks from your local library. And I read them on my phone just because it's so easy. Anytime I think I'm going to I catch myself spending too much time on Instagram, I just click over to the Libby app and then I can read instead of wasting time on my phone. And it's honestly, it is a life changer for me. And also when you are nursing a child, reading on a phone is very convenient.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Absolutely. So kind of bringing things back to the glow. Again, I know you've done your job. You've written the book. You've given it to us. And we're trying to not pay too much attention to those Goodreads reviews. But in an ideal world, what are you hoping readers might think or feel after they've turned the very last page?
I hope they feel like they've gotten a really good story, like they were able to escape, like they laughed, and also like they think healthcare should be free.
That I have to agree with 100% because that medical debt was no joke, no joke. And it's really hard when, you're a late 20 something and you're trying to make a crack at life and just end up down those rabbit holes. But I hope readers, you'll give this one a go. It's entitled, again, The Glow by Jessie Gaynor. Jessie, thank you so much for coming on the show and speaking with me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to the Reader's Couch podcast. Please subscribe to the show, share it with a friend, and take a few seconds to leave a rating and review. Until next time, stay lounging, stay reading, and whenever you're in doubt, go straight to your local bookstore or library. Thanks again for listening, and happy reading.